The front door slammed so hard that the picture on the wall shook. My daughter didn't even look back. She had just run out, in tears, after yet another argument with her husband. I was there, standing in the living room, holding a cup of cold coffee, feeling the heavy silence that hung in the air. My son-in-law simply went back to his office as if nothing had happened. As if I weren't there. As if that house were still mine too. 3 years earlier, when my wife passed away, I didn't know what to do with myself. The house where we raised our daughter, where we spent 42 years together, became a museum of silence. Every corner held a memory too painful to face alone. So when my daughter suggested I move in with her and her husband, I accepted. I sold everything. The house, the furniture, the garden plants that my wife tended every Sunday. I took the money and decided to start over near the only family I had left. At first, everything seemed perfect. They needed help, and I had resources. I paid for their wedding, which cost more than I imagined possible to spend in a single day. I bought her a new car, a silver sedan my daughter had always dreamed of having. When bills got tight at the end of the month, I covered them. Quietly, without making a fuss, because family helps family. Or at least that's what I believed. What I didn't expect was to become invisible in my own home. Or rather, in their home. Because it was never mine, I realized that later. My son-in-law had a way of looking at me that said exactly that. A look that passed through me, as if I were part of the furniture. He only saw me when he needed something. It went on like this for 3 years. 3 years of helping, supporting, being useful. I paid for renovations, covered credit card debts they were hiding from each other, put a down payment on an apartment they wanted to rent but never finalized. And when the house almost went into foreclosure because he had made bad investments that no one told me about, I was the one who took $180,000 from my retirement and paid it all off. My daughter cried with relief that day. She hugged me and said I had saved their family. But my son-in-law just nodded, as if it were my obligation. As if I owed them that. After that, things changed. Or maybe I just started noticing what had always been there. The conversations that stopped when I entered the room. The whispers late at night. The way he controlled every decision in the house, from what we watched on TV to the time we could use the laundry. My daughter slowly faded, and I, being old and tired, let it happen. Until that Friday night. We were having dinner, something rare, because usually I ate alone in my room. My daughter had insisted on making a family dinner, and I came down excited, thinking maybe things were improving. I had barely sat at the table when he slammed his fork down and stared at me. "We need to talk about something," said my son-in-law, wiping his mouth with a napkin. "My wife's parents are coming to stay for a few months. They need a place to stay." I looked at my daughter, hoping she would explain better, but she was staring at her plate, poking at the food without eating. My stomach tightened. "All right," I replied slowly. "You have the guest room, don't you?" He smiled, but it wasn't a friendly smile. It was the kind of smile you give someone who didn't get the joke. "The guest room is being used as my office now. You know that." He paused and crossed his arms. "So either you give them your room, or you find somewhere else to live." The silence that fell over the table was deafening. I looked at my daughter again, hoping, begging her to say something. Anything. But she remained silent, her eyes full of tears she wouldn't let fall. "Are you serious?" I asked, feeling my chest tighten. "Completely," he replied, going back to eating as if he had just asked me to pass the salt. I felt the floor vanish beneath my feet. It wasn't the first time I felt disrespected in that house, but this was different. This was a line being crossed. A line I didn't even know existed until it was trampled right in front of me. I got up from the table slowly, my legs shaking, not from weakness, but from a contained anger I hadn't felt in years. I went upstairs, entered my room, and closed the door. I stood there, staring at the empty suitcases in the closet, taking deep breaths, trying to process what had just happened. 3 years. $180,000. Countless sacrifices. And now I was disposable. But something changed inside me that night. It wasn't despair. It wasn't sadness. It was clarity. For the first time in a long time, I saw the situation for what it really was. And I decided I wasn't just going to leave. I was going to do something they would never expect from a man my age. I packed my bags in silence. Every piece of folded clothing was a decision being made. Every drawer closed was a renewed commitment to myself. When I finished, it was almost 2 in the morning. The house was silent. I went downstairs carrying my 2 suitcases, left the house keys on the living room table, and walked out. I didn't slam the door. I didn't leave a note. I just left. At the motel, lying on that hard bed in a cheap motel, staring at the cracked ceiling, I felt something I hadn't felt in 3 years: freedom. And with it came the memory of who I was before I became the convenient old man who paid the bills. I had been a financial consultant for 35 years. I had helped companies on the verge of bankruptcy restructure. I had taught people to read between the lines of contracts, to see the game behind the pretty words. I knew how to plan. I knew strategy. And most importantly, I knew how to wait for the right moment. The next morning, I called my lawyer. Then, my real estate agent. And then, I began putting into practice something that made me feel alive for the first time in years. 3 weeks later, I was signing the deed to a house. Not just any house. The house directly across from theirs. From my new office, I could see the living room window where I was thrown out. Where I was discarded like trash. And it was there, looking through the window, that I began the second part of my plan. If you're enjoying this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Because what happened after that changed everything. The first week in the new house was strange. I would wake up early, make coffee, and sit looking out the office window, observing their routine across the street. It wasn't spying, it was study. I needed to understand the patterns, the schedules, the dynamics I had previously ignored by being inside the situation. My son-in-law left every day at 8:30, always in a hurry, always on the phone. My daughter stayed home, and I could see through the kitchen window how she spent hours alone, just staring into nothingness. It broke my heart in a way that being kicked out hadn't. Because now I could see clearly, she was trapped. On the 3rd day, I got a call from her. I answered on the first ring. "Dad, where are you?" Her voice was shaky. "You just disappeared. I'm worried." I took a deep breath before answering. "I'm fine. I found a place to stay." "But why?" "We could have talked, found another solution." "Your solution was giving me an ultimatum at the dinner table," I cut in, trying to keep my voice calm. "And you said nothing. So I accepted the choice you made for me." I heard her sob on the other end. "Dad, I didn't know he would do it that way. I swear I didn't." "You knew," I said quietly. "Maybe you didn't know the exact words, but you knew something like this would happen. And you chose not to warn me. You chose not to defend me." The silence that followed was long and painful. Finally, she whispered, "I'm sorry." "Me too," I replied. And I hung up. I sat there for hours, staring at the phone, fighting the urge to call back and say it was okay, that I would come back if she needed me. But it wasn't okay. And going back would have validated that I had no value beyond my bank account. Meanwhile, I began putting my plan into action. I called my lawyer Thomas, a man who had worked with me for 15 years and knew every detail of my financial situation. "I need you to prepare a formal notice," I told him. "I want to document every cent I invested in that house. The wedding, the car, the bills, the mortgage. Everything." Thomas was silent for a moment. "Are you sure? It's your daughter." "Exactly because it's my daughter," I replied. "She needs to see what happened. She needs to wake up." He sighed. "I'll need a few days to gather all the documentation." "No rush," I said, looking out the window at their house. "I want it to be perfect." While waiting for the documents, I spent my days setting up my new office. It wasn't just a room with a desk, it was strategic. I placed my desk facing the window, with a direct view of their living room. I installed a large lamp that stayed on late, creating a constant glow they couldn't ignore. It wasn't to annoy them. It was to exist. To remind them I was there, across the street, alive and present. I began to notice things I had previously overlooked. How my son-in-law came home later and later. How he would enter without greeting my daughter, going straight to his office. How on weekends he would disappear for hours, claiming meetings, but return smelling of beer. And then one afternoon, I saw something that changed everything. His parents arrived. 2 cars parked in front of the house, and a middle-aged couple got out carrying luggage. Lots of luggage. More than anyone brings for a short visit. My daughter opened the door, and even from a distance, I could see the forced expression on her face. A smile that didn't reach her eyes. They went inside, and minutes later, I saw my son-in-law carrying their suitcases upstairs. Straight to what had once been my room. The room where I had kept my wife's memories, where I spent sleepless nights remembering 42 years of marriage. Now occupied by people who didn't even know me. I felt anger rise, but I breathed deeply. Anger wouldn't solve anything. Strategy would. 2 days later, the notice arrived. An 18-page legal document detailing every financial transaction I had made for their benefit. Amounts, dates, descriptions. All documented with bank statements and receipts. At the end, the total, $243,000. Thomas delivered it personally. He called me right after. I delivered it into your son-in-law's hands, he said. He opened it immediately, in front of me. He went pale. And my daughter? She was in the kitchen. I don't think she even knows yet. I hung up and watched the house. 15 minutes later, I saw my son-in-law rushing out, getting into the car, and speeding away. My daughter appeared at the window, holding a paper. Even from a distance, I could see she was crying. That night was the worst. I heard shouting. Their window was open, and the voices carried across the silent street. I couldn't make out the words, but the tone was clear. Anger. Desperation. Accusations. I wanted to cross the street, knock on the door, hold my daughter, and tell her everything would be fine. But it wouldn't. Not while she chose to remain trapped in that dynamic. The next morning, I cut the monthly transfer. For 3 years, I had sent $2,000 every 15th to their joint account. Quietly. They thought my son-in-law's salary covered everything, but in reality, my money patched the holes he created with bad investments and impulsive spending. Now, the 15th passed. And nothing. The first thing that happened was subtle. My daughter stopped driving the car. I began to see her walking to the market, carrying heavy bags on the way back. The silver sedan sat in the garage for days, until one morning, a tow truck came to pick it up. I watched from the window as they took the car away. My daughter stood on the porch, hugging herself, watching the car I had bought disappear around the corner. She didn't cry. She just stood there, as if watching a piece of her life being taken. I called her that night. Dad. Her voice was tired. I saw they took the car. She laughed, but it was a bitter laugh. We couldn't pay the installments. Funny, isn't it? I thought we were fine. But apparently, without you paying the bills every month, we're going broke. You didn't know about the money I sent? No. He never told me. Said it was his salary. She paused. Dad, that document that arrived, is it true? You really spent all that on us? Every cent is documented. And now you want it back? No, I said slowly. I want you to wake up. She was silent for a long time. Finally, she whispered, I don't know how to get out of this. You do, I said. You're just scared. When I hung up, I looked out the window and saw my son-in-law arriving. He slammed the car door, stomped up the steps, and entered the house. Minutes later, the shouting started again. His parents left a week later. They left early in the morning, without saying goodbye, carrying the same luggage they had brought. My daughter wasn't home when they left. Or she was hiding. I couldn't tell. But what I knew was that cracks were beginning to appear. The perfect facade my son-in-law had built was crumbling. And I still wasn't finished. Because there was one more thing I discovered while organizing the documents with Thomas. Something that would change everything. Something even my daughter didn't know. But that, I was going to save for the right moment. What I discovered in the documents changed everything. It wasn't just about the money I had spent. It was about what my son-in-law had been hiding. While Thomas was organizing my bank statements, he found something strange. Transfers I had made to the house account weren't the only transactions. There were others. Large. Regular. Going to an account I didn't recognize. Did you authorize transfers to this LLC? Thomas asked, pointing at the statement. I looked at the name, Horizon Growth Investments. I had never heard of it. No, I replied. What is this? Thomas investigated. It took 3 days, but he came back with information that made me understand the magnitude of the situation. The LLC was registered under my son-in-law's name. And more, it was bankrupt. It had been created 2 years ago, right after I paid off the house mortgage. The money I was sending monthly wasn't just covering bills. It was being diverted to risky investments that went wrong. He was using you as a personal bank, Thomas said, showing the documents. And judging by the timeline here, your daughter probably knows nothing about this. I sank heavily into the chair, holding the papers. It wasn't just disrespect. It was fraud. Systematic manipulation. And my daughter was in the middle of it, completely in the dark. What can I do? I asked. Legally? You can sue him. You have enough documentation to prove bad faith. Thomas paused. But this will blow up the whole family. I stayed silent, thinking. I didn't want to destroy. I wanted to awaken. I wanted my daughter to see who was really by her side. But I also couldn't let it go unpunished. I'll wait, I finally decided. But keep everything documented. I might need it. Meanwhile, I continued observing. The deterioration was accelerating now. Without the car, without the extra money, reality hit their doorstep hard. I began seeing bills arrive in the mail, envelopes with red late notices. My daughter spent hours on the phone, negotiating deadlines, asking for extensions. And my son-in-law? He disappeared more and more. Came home late, when he came at all. There were nights when his car didn't even appear in the garage. One afternoon, my daughter crossed the street. I was in the office, reviewing some old contracts, when the doorbell rang. My heart raced. It had been almost 2 months since I left that house, and this was the first time she had come to me. I opened the door. She looked different. Thinner. Deep dark circles under her eyes. Hair tied back carelessly. But her eyes had something new. A determination I hadn't seen in years. "Can I come in?" she asked. I stepped aside silently. She entered, looking around, seeing the house for the first time. Small, simple, but organized. "Mine. Coffee?" I offered. She nodded. I made 2 cups, and we sat at the kitchen table. The silence was dense, full of unspoken things. "I found out about the money," she began, looking at her cup. "The monthly transfers. The 3 years paying our bills. I didn't know, Dad. He never told me." "I know." She raised her eyes, surprised. "You know?" "I discovered a lot after I left that house. Things you also need to know." I told her everything. The LLC. The failed investments. The diverted money. Every word was like a stone thrown into the still water of the illusion she had been holding on to. She listened silently, tears streaming without her trying to wipe them away. When I finished, she stood there, processing. "Finally," she whispered, "he told me you were trying to destroy our marriage. That you were selfish. That you had abandoned us when we needed you the most." "And you believed him?" "I wanted to believe him," she admitted, her voice breaking. "Because accepting the truth would mean admitting I wasted years of my life with someone who only uses me." I reached across the table. She held my hand, squeezing tight, like she did as a child when she was afraid of storms. "You didn't waste anything," I said. "You were trying to make it work. But some things don't work, no matter how hard you try." She stayed for another hour. We talked about things beyond the conflict. About her mother, about old memories, about plans that never came true. When she left, I saw something different in the way she walked. Less hunched. Less dimmed. But I knew the battle wasn't over yet. And I was right. 2 days later, my son-in-law showed up. He didn't ring the bell. He pounded on the door, shouting my name. I opened it and found him red with rage, fists clenched. "You are destroying my family," he shouted. "Putting poison in my wife's head." "Your wife came here looking for the truth," I replied calmly. "I just gave her what she asked for." "Truth? You want to talk about truth?" He stepped forward, invading my space. "You're a bitter old man who can't accept that your daughter grew up and doesn't need you anymore." I remained calm, despite the blood boiling in my veins. If she didn't need me, you wouldn't have spent 3 years using my money to fund your life of lies. He went pale. I didn't. Horizon Growth Investments, I cut in. Do you want me to continue? The silence that fell was absolute. He opened and closed his mouth a few times, searching for words that wouldn't come. Finally, he spat out, "You can't prove anything." I smiled. It was the first time in months I truly smiled. I can. And I will, if necessary. But here's what's going to happen. You will stop manipulating my daughter. You will stop lying. And you will start treating her with the respect she deserves. Or what? Or I give everything to my lawyer and let the law decide what to do with financial fraud. He stared at me for long seconds, trying to find a loophole, a way to reverse the situation. But there was none. And he knew it. This isn't going to end well for you, he threatened quietly. It hasn't been ending well for me for 3 years, I replied. The difference is that now I decide how it ends. He left, slamming the car door. From the office window, I saw him enter the house, and minutes later, start another argument with my daughter. But this time it was different. This time, she fought back. I could see it in her gestures, her posture. She wasn't bending anymore. She was standing up. And it filled me with a pride I hadn't felt in a long time. That night, I called Thomas. Prepare the final documents. I want everything ready to present if necessary. Are you really going to do this? I'll do whatever it takes to protect my daughter, I replied. Even if it's from herself. The following days were tense. Their house became a silent battlefield. They barely spoke. My son-in-law left early and returned late, avoiding confrontations. My daughter spent her days on the porch, staring into nothingness, clearly making difficult decisions. And then one morning, something changed. My daughter left the house with a suitcase. Just one. She put it in his car trunk, which was still there, and waited. My son-in-law ran out, trying to stop her. There was a brief argument, but she got in the car and left. My phone rang 10 minutes later. Dad? Can I stay with you for a few days? I closed my eyes, feeling a deep relief. You can stay as long as you need. She arrived an hour later, entered silently, left the suitcase in the guest room, and sat on the couch, looking out the window at the house she had just left. I don't know if I did the right thing, she said, her voice trembling. I sat next to her. You did. And it will be hard. But I'm here. She rested her head on my shoulder, like she used to as a child. And for the first time in 3 years, I felt truly at home. But the story wasn't over yet. My daughter stayed with me for 2 weeks. They were strange days, full of adjustment, comfortable silences, and deep conversations we should have had years ago. She began looking for a job, something she hadn't done since the wedding. Every morning, I would see her sitting at the kitchen table, laptop open, filling out forms, sending resumes. She was rebuilding. And I was there, watching with pride. But across the street, the house was falling apart. Literally. The grass wasn't being cut. Mail piled up in the mailbox. One of the windows had a crack that no one fixed. And my son-in-law? He came and went like a ghost, increasingly sloppy, increasingly desperate. Then one Thursday night, he crossed the street again. But this time it was different. He didn't come shouting. He came humble, downcast, knocking on the door gently. My daughter was in the room. I opened it alone. "Can I talk to you?" he asked, his voice low. I stepped aside. He entered and stood in the living room, looking at the floor. I didn't offer coffee. I didn't offer a seat. I just waited. "I ruined everything," he began, hands shaking. "I know. I have no excuse. The money, the lies, the way I treated you. I was desperate. The investments failed, and I couldn't admit I had failed. So I kept lying, digging deeper each time. And my daughter? Did you think of her at any point?" He swallowed hard. I did. But wrongly. I thought if I kept everything running, if I could fix things myself, she would never need to know. Never need to worry. But you didn't fix it. You only made it worse. I know. He finally looked at me, his eyes red. And now I'm losing everything. The house is going into foreclosure again. I can't pay anything anymore. And the worst. I'm losing her. Please, you need to help me. You need to convince her to come back. I felt anger rising. Do you really think I'll do that? You love your daughter. I know you love her. And I love her too. I know it doesn't seem like it, I know I did everything wrong, but I love her. And I can change. I can be better. I took a deep breath, measuring each word before speaking. Do you know the difference between loving someone and using someone? Love means putting the person first. It means being honest even when it hurts. It means respect. Did you do any of these things? He was silent. My daughter won't come back because I ask. She will come back only if you prove you deserve it. And so far, all you've proven is that you don't. Give me a chance, he pleaded. Please. I'll pay everything back. I'll work as much as needed. I'll be transparent. I just need her to come back. It's not me you need to talk to, I said, pointing down the hallway. It's her. My daughter was at the bedroom door, arms crossed, watching everything. I don't know how long she had been there, but from her expression, she had heard it all. Go ahead, she said, her voice firm. I'm here. He turned, surprised. You heard. I heard. And now I want to hear you talk to me. Not my father. Me. I stepped out quietly, giving space. I went to the office and closed the door, but I could still hear the muffled voices. I didn't try to catch the words. That conversation wasn't mine. It was theirs. It lasted nearly 2 hours. When it ended, he left without saying anything, shoulders slumped, defeated. My daughter came to the office, leaning on the doorframe. He apologized, she said. Cried. Promised to change. And you believe him? She shrugged. I don't know. But I won't go back just with words. I need to see actions. I need to see real change. That's wise. I learned from you, she smiled for the first time in weeks. Seeing how you handled all of this showed me that we don't have to accept crumbs. We deserve respect. That night, I slept better than I had in months. But the peace didn't last long. 3 days later, I got a call from Thomas at 7 in the morning. Did you see the news? He asked, urgency in his voice. What news? Your son-in-law was arrested last night. My heart stopped. Arrested? Why? Fraud. Apparently, he wasn't just diverting money from you. There were other investors in the LLC. People he convinced to put money into his projects. When everything failed, he tried to cover his tracks by falsifying documents. One of the investors got suspicious and went to the police. I closed my eyes, processing. Is my daughter involved? Doesn't seem so. Legally, she's clear. The LLC is only under his name. I hung up and went to her room. I knocked softly. You awake? I am, she answered. I entered and saw she was also on the phone, tears running silently. She hung up when she saw me. You already know, I realized. She nodded. His lawyer called. Asked me to pay bail. $50,000. And you will. I don't have the money. And even if I did, she paused, wiping her tears. I don't know if I would. I sat on the edge of the bed. What do you want to do? I don't know, Dad. He did all this. Lied, stole, ruined people. But he's my husband. I made vows. Vows work both ways. He broke all of them. She was silent for a long time. Finally, she whispered, I need to see him. I need to hear from his own mouth what really happened. We went to the prison the next day. I waited in the visitation room while she went in to speak with him. When she returned 20 minutes later, her face was pale. He confessed everything, she said, voice empty. Said it started small, just taking loans he thought he could pay back. But it grew. And when he realized it, he was too deep to get out. He forged signatures, created false documents, invented returns that never existed. And what will you do? I'm filing for divorce. The words came firm, decisive. There was no hesitation. It was the clarity of someone who had finally seen the full truth. In the following weeks, everything happened fast. My daughter filed the divorce papers. She hired a lawyer to ensure she wouldn't be held responsible for his debts. The house went to auction, and all assets were seized to pay creditors. And my son-in-law? He was sentenced to 3 years in prison. Fraud, document forgery, embezzlement. The list was long. On the day of the sentence, my daughter wanted to go. I went with her. We sat at the back of the courtroom, watching as he stood before the judge, hearing the charges. He looked back once, meeting her eyes. There was regret there. Maybe even love. But it was too late. When we left the courthouse, my daughter took a deep breath, as if releasing years of weight. "It's over," she said. "Really over. Now you can start again." She corrected. "We can start again." We returned home, the small house across from the one that had once been the scene of so much suffering. But now, looking out the window, I saw no more pain. Only an empty structure waiting for new inhabitants. My daughter got a job 2 weeks later. It wasn't much, just an administrative position at an accounting firm. But it was hers. Earned on her own merit. And she came home every day with a smile I hadn't seen in years. I started seeing clients again, financial consulting for small businesses. I didn't need the money, but I needed purpose. And I discovered I still had much to offer. One night, while we were having dinner together, my daughter held my hand across the table. "Thank you," she said. "For what?" "For not giving up on me. Even when I gave up on myself." I squeezed her hand. "I'll never give up on you. I'm your father. That's what I'm here for." She smiled, and in that smile, I saw the child who used to run into my arms after school. The young woman who dreamed of changing the world. The strong woman who was rising from the ashes. The past hurt. But the present was good. And the future? For the first time in years, the future looked promising. 6 months later, the house across the street was sold. A young family moved in, with 2 small children who filled the street with life and noise. Sometimes I would see them playing in the yard and remember when my daughter was that age, running barefoot across the grass, laughing without a care. Time has a peculiar way of healing wounds. It doesn't erase scars, but it teaches you to live with them. And gradually, that house stopped being a symbol of pain and became just a house. Just bricks and windows where other people built their own stories. My daughter flourished. It didn't happen overnight. There were relapses, moments when she doubted herself, nights she cried questioning whether she had made the right choice. But each day she grew a little stronger, a little more like the woman I always knew she had been beneath years of manipulation. She got a promotion at work. Small, but significant. She came home that day practically floating, her eyes shining in a way I hadn't seen since before the wedding. "Assistant manager," she announced, showing her new badge. "With a salary increase and everything." "I'm proud of you," I said, and I saw tears forming in her eyes. "You know what's crazy? I did it on my own. No one gave me anything out of pity or because they knew someone. I earned it." That word, earned, carried so much weight. Years of being treated as if she had no value, as if she were just an accessory in someone else's life, had eroded her self-esteem in ways I only now fully understood. Watching her reclaim her dignity was like watching a flower bloom after a harsh winter. She began looking for an apartment. Not because living with me was bad, but because she needed it. She needed to prove to herself that she could stand on her own. "No need to rush," I said when she told me. "I know. But I want to. I need this step." I helped with the down payment. Not like before, not as someone paying everything to keep appearances, but as a father helping his daughter build her independence. She insisted on signing a document promising to pay me back in installments, even though I insisted it wasn't necessary. "It's necessary for me," she explained. "I need to do this the right way." And she did. Every month, without fail, she deposited the agreed-upon installment. Modest amounts, but deposited punctually. It wasn't about the money. It was about integrity. About making promises and keeping them. As for me, I fully resumed my consulting career. At first, I accepted only a few old clients who reached out. But word spread. A 67-year-old man who understood not only numbers but people. Who knew that behind every spreadsheet there were dreams, fears, and families depending on the right decisions. I also began giving talks. Small events, workshops on financial planning for retirees. And I discovered I had stories to tell. Not mine specifically, but lessons learned over decades helping people navigate the complicated waters of money and relationships. The most important thing I've learned, I would say in these talks, is that money without respect is just paper passing hands. And sometimes, the most generous thing we can do for someone we love is let them face the consequences of their choices. There was resistance when my daughter wanted to visit her ex-husband in prison. Not from me, but from herself. She spent weeks debating, writing letters she never sent, practicing conversations that never happened. I don't know if it's weakness or strength to want to talk to him, she confessed one night. It's courage, I replied. Weakness would be pretending those years never happened. Strength is facing them and deciding what to do with that experience. She went. She returned 3 hours later, eyes swollen but calm. How was it? I asked. Necessary, she replied, sitting next to me on the couch. He's different. Thinner, older. But mostly, more honest. He truly apologized. Didn't ask for anything in return, didn't try to manipulate me. He just acknowledged everything he did wrong. And how did you feel? Relieved. It doesn't change what happened, but it closes a chapter. I can move forward without anger stuck in my throat. Forgiveness doesn't mean reconciliation. I learned that watching my daughter. She forgave, not because he deserved it, but because she needed to. She needed to let go of that weight to soar higher. But forgiving didn't mean going back, didn't mean forgetting, didn't mean giving more chances. It simply meant accepting the past and choosing not to let it poison the future. On her birthday, a year after it all began, I organized a dinner. Small, just the two of us and a few close friends she had made at her new job. Seeing her laugh, talk animatedly, being genuinely happy, was the greatest gift I received. After everyone left and we were cleaning together, she stopped in the middle of the kitchen and hugged me. A long, tight hug, the kind that needs no words. Thank you for buying that house, she whispered. For what? Because if you had truly left, gone far away, it would have been easier for me to keep pretending everything was fine. Seeing you there, across the street, every day, reminded me that there was another way to live. With dignity. With self-respect. That sentence stayed with me for days. Because it was true. My plan was never revenge. It was presence. It was refusing to disappear just because it was convenient for them. It was saying, with every light on in my window, with every morning drinking coffee watching the street, that I still existed. That I still had value. That I couldn't be discarded like trash. And in the process of fighting for my own dignity, I ended up showing my daughter that she also had the right to fight for hers. Today, when I look back, I don't see lost time. I see lessons learned. About the difference between helping and enabling. Between generosity and being used. Between love and toxic dependence. I learned that setting boundaries isn't selfish, it's self-respect. And sometimes, the most loving thing we can do is let people face the storms they created. My daughter is building a life that is truly hers. No lies, no dependencies, no fear. And me? I'm living my final years not as someone discarded, but as someone who chose his own path. Who regained his autonomy. Who reminded the world, and especially himself, that age does not diminish value. That house I bought across from theirs wasn't just a strategy. It was a statement. A silent manifesto saying I wouldn't disappear into the shadows just because existing was inconvenient. And that decision, that refusal to be invisible, saved not only me. It saved my daughter too. Sometimes, justice isn't about destroying those who hurt us. It's about rebuilding who we are after the pain. It's about showing we weren't broken, only temporarily bent. And when we rise again, we rise stronger, wiser, more aware of our own worth. If there's one thing I want people to understand from this story, it's this: you teach others how to treat you. If you accept crumbs, they'll give you crumbs. If you accept disrespect, they'll disrespect you. But when you stand up, set boundaries, and show that you have value independent of what you can offer, you change the entire dynamic. It wasn't easy. There were nights of doubt, moments when I wanted to give in, go back, accept the role of the convenient old man who pays the bills and stays quiet in the corner. But every time I looked out the window and saw that house, I remembered why I was doing it. Not for revenge. Not out of anger. But for dignity. And in the end, dignity is worth more than any sum of money, any temporary comfort, any false peace built on disrespect. Today, at 68, I have less money than I did before. But I have something far more valuable: respect. My own and that of those around me. I have a daughter who shines again. I have purpose. I have peace. And when I close my eyes at night, I sleep knowing I did the right thing. Not the easiest thing, but the right thing. If you've made it this far, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. And remember, you always have the right to fight for your own dignity. No matter your age, no matter the situation, no matter how many people say you should accept less. You deserve respect. And sometimes, earning that respect means making difficult choices, setting painful boundaries, and refusing to accept the role others want to force upon you. Choose yourself. Always.